This is Merrill, and welcome to Scrum in 7 Stickies. Take 1. For more, please visit scrumin7.com. Let's do this. Here is my take on the Scrum framework. If I had to summarize it, I'd say something along the lines of Scrum is a way to get things done in a world that's always changing. So what do we mean by a world that's always changing? Well, let's take a look at sticky number 1 and the big figure on there being 20%. This is the pain. So 20% of projects, there's a statistic out there that says 20% of projects end up finishing on time and on budget. I think it's a little less, closer to 18. There's another statistic out there that says when you take a look at the functionality of any of the products that you use, you're only really using about 20% of those features. So what does that mean? It means that there's a lot of waste that goes into all these finished products that end up landing on your lap for you to use, and there's a lot of opportunity in terms of time and cost that is there. So this is how they usually sell Agile as a way to help you in your product development, not just for software. Agile as a mindset and Scrum as a framework specifically. So now if you Google image search Agile or Scrum, you end up getting the following kind of picture. It's always an umbrella with Agile written in here. And what is that supposed to mean? Agile is an umbrella term for a variety of lighter weight ways to write software. So Scrum is under that umbrella. It was codified in 1995. You can look it up. You can go to scrumguides.org for the playbook for Scrum. And you can go to agilemanifesto.org for the values and the principles. And that was developed the winter towards the beginning of 2001, where a bunch of thought leaders in the software development world got together and said, man, there's got to be a better way to write software. So I'm trying to disambiguate, if that's a term, the two words of Scrum and Agile. Scrum is a framework codified in 1995, which we're going to get into in a bit, and Agile is a mindset that encapsulates a bunch of different ways to write software. Extreme programming is considered a part of that. There's this thing called Crystal that I never really got. There's Kanban, there's test-driven development. Behavior-driven development is in here as well. There are a few other concepts that are in the Agile umbrella. Now, a very concrete way to think about agility. I'm going to show you sticky number 3 here before we get into Scrum. Agile is a mindset for getting things done. I can't read backwards on the camera here. A mindset for getting things done while learning from feedback. If you've ever taken a look at the blue book with the white circle, The Lean Startup by Eric Ries, this is Agile applied. And so it talks about the build, measure, learn cycle, where you build something, you measure something, and then you learn from it. And that is the engine for doing, for running a startup. The premise of the book is large companies know the problem and they're trying to figure out the solution. Startups don't really know the problem, let alone the solution. So let us build little things based on hypotheses that we have to try to get a better understanding of the problem so that we can come up with a better solution. So you actually want to do this backwards. You want to figure out what you want to learn and then figure out how you want to measure that and then build the minimum amount to then measure that and then after some time figure out what you want. If you're learning, if you're learning, then you make a decision point from here to to then either continue, to persevere, or to change direction, to pivot. So this is where the pivot lingo got really popular, and this whole concept of build just enough so that you can then measure something to then make a decision. That's MVP, that's the minimum viable product. So this is an example of a feedback loop in what you're doing. And you'll hear a reference to feedback loops a lot in your study of agility and Scrum. Here's sticky number 4. If you Google image search Scrum specifically, you'll end up seeing something like this. And I'll refer to this diagram on a sticky in a little bit again. Because what this is saying is as you move forward, you will be looking at your practices and your product and even having a feedback loop on that feedback loop, because we love feedback loops so much. But it is a way to critically look at how we can be better as we move forward. So you can see that this doesn't have to apply to just software development. It can also apply to personal development, which is something that I've been blogging about for almost a decade now. So let's get into Scrum. Scrum is made up of 3 roles, 5 events, and 3 artifacts. Let's talk about the roles, the hats that people can wear. Now again, this is my flavor of explaining Scrum, so I'm going to do it a little bit differently. I'm going to start with how Simon Sinek likes to start things. Start with why. So I bring this up. And I like thinking of abstract terms, so please bear with me. If we look at the why behind what we do things, our vision, our mission, our reason for being, what we do, the products that we pump out into the world, and how we do it, the processes that we use to build these products towards a vision of the future that we're all moving towards. I think about the roles as fitting into this construct. So we have 3 roles in Scrum: the product owner, the development team, and the Scrum Master. The product owner is akin to a product manager. But in this construct, they own the why. The why does not fall in here. It doesn't really fall in here either. So they own the direction, and hopefully they can really sell how anything that is being built can tie to the direction of the company. Let's take it to this end of the spectrum. On the how side, this is wholly owned by the development team. The development team is a group of individual contributors, hopefully cross-functional and full stack and self-organizing or autonomous. I'll explain that right now. Self-organizing and autonomous means that they decide how things get done. It's on them. It's not on the product person. It's not on the Scrum Master. It's on them. So they have that autonomy, that freedom to figure out and change along the way how things get built and how they communicate with each other. That's the autonomy and self-organization. What else are they? They're small, 7 plus or minus 2 people to reduce communication lines and therefore not get your clarity too muddled. And I'll probably come back to the other terms here. So the what, as you'll see over here, is in between the development team and the product owner. That means it's a collaboration between the two. What usually ends up happening is the product owner, based on this person's vision of the future and where we would like to go, comes up with things that the development team should build. So this person writes up requirements, or in the Agile world, they tend to be called user stories. I'm not going to cover those in this video. And it is brought to the development team where they look at them and they give input on the priority and the refinement. Maybe this thing that is being asked of them would take too long, or it's too complicated, or they don't have the people, or they don't have the software architecture to get things done. They're just not ready to take it on. That's fine. That's why this is a collaboration as to what is being built. But it's always owned by this product person here. This person owns what gets done and the priority of it, which is why one of the hardest things for the product owner to do is to say no. They are the hub for lots of stakeholders, which means that this person has to go around saying, no, not yet. And I understand that this thing that you're bringing to me is like your baby and you think it's really beautiful, but it's really number 5 compared to all these other babies that we're playing with over here. And I have to be able to justify why it's number 5. That's a tough job for this person. So that's why I view this as a very, very tough role. They have to be tactical, engaging with the development team, as well as talking to the customer. Scrum Master over here is not in charge of the why, the what, or the how. They kind of sit outside of all that, and this person serves the product owner and the development team. And that's why I draw it like this, so that it kind of looks like 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth, and makes me giggle on the inside anyway. Thanks for tolerating. Anyway, this person knows the Scrum game, knows the rules of Scrum, and coaches everybody. This person's a team coach, coaches everybody towards success in the Scrum framework. You'll also associate the removal of impediments with this person here. They are getting things out of the way of these people as they get things done that they can't get rid of themselves. So a way that I like to think of this person is helping the whole team own their evolution, own their growth. And once this team gets to the point where they are able to come up with experiments for getting better over time, both in terms of how they do things and what they're actually building, then maybe you don't need this person. It's super duper rare to get to that point, but that's the intention behind the Scrum Master. I now remember a couple of things that I brought up earlier, the notion that the development teams are full stack and cross-functional. So I'm going to circle back for a second. A cross-functional development team means that it has everything you need to make something. So you have the makers or the developers, the testers, designers, and if you can really pull this off, marketers and sales folks, so that within this group, you have everything you need to take an idea from concept to cash. That's the ideal anyway. And full stack in software terms, for those who don't know, means that within this team you have knowledge of the back end, the middle layer, and the front end. All the different layers of software development to get things done. So I think I'll pause here. This is meant to be a survey of Scrum. Let's go to the 5 events. I have to fit it diagonally on sticky number 6 here. So if you hear the word Scrum, you often end up hearing about sprints as one of the events. I'll just step through this right now. This is meant to be the sprint planning, the daily Scrum, and then towards the end of the sprint, you have the review and the retrospective. Let's talk about the sprint. The sprint is just a box of time. It's a time box. Pick one. The industry average ends up being 2 weeks. I've seen places that have done 3 weeks. I've seen places that have done 1 week. I've heard of places that do a day. So all it is, it's a box of time within which certain other events can take place. Let's talk about sprint planning next. At the beginning of the sprint, you want to plan for the sprint. And a question to walk into this meeting with is, do we think we can get all this done? What is this? This is the work that the development team will be doing during the sprint, and that work is called the sprint backlog. That's in the next sticky over there. So the sprint is planned for at sprint planning. Let's figure out all the things that we want to do during the sprint. And then the daily stand-up, sometimes called the daily scrum, it happens for about 15 minutes every day, where a decent way to think about that meeting is, instead of asking the sprint planning, do we think we can get all this done, you ask the daily scrum version of that, which is, do we still think we can get all this done? It's like mini planning. So each day that goes by, you look at your sprint's list of things to do and the sprint goal, if you have one, to say, do we think we can still get all this done? Do we still think we can get all this done? And if, as time passes, you discover that, oh no, we're not going to get all these things done, that's okay. You're going to find out here anyway. So this is where you get to tell the product owner, and then go tell the stakeholders to say, look, I know we said that we're probably going to get your thing done during our list of things to do during the sprint, but it doesn't look like it. I'm telling you as soon as I find out. So this way you get to disappoint early and disappoint often, but you're likely going to disappoint anyway. So this construct of Scrum de-risks a lot of this information sharing, because you're sharing it earlier. De-risking isn't the best phrase there, but you're sharing this information early versus later. Towards the end of the sprint, you have the review and the retrospective. I think of these as opportunities for feedback. The review is feedback in the what, and the retrospective is feedback in the how. So the review is when you, as a development team, share all the things that you've done with the stakeholders. Most people think of this as the demo. To say, here's what we've done. And hey, what feedback do you have for us that could impact what we start building in the next sprint? So that's review in what is being built. The retrospective is the meeting that is a feedback in how things were built. This is the meeting where people cry, laugh, get angry, and all the feelings come out. This usually happens after the review and before the start of the next sprint. You are in between sprints. You're in between worlds. It's the netherworld. So this is a very natural time to be doing a retrospective, because a certain part of your work life is behind you and you haven't started the next thing. So let's talk about what just happened. It's a very delicate meeting, and the idea is to walk away with an actionable item of improvement, a piece of Kaizen, that you can then incorporate into the next sprint's list of things to do. Let's take a look at what that list of things to do looks like, which would mean we're in sticky number 7, and we talk about backlogs. We have the product backlog here, we have the sprint backlog over here, and this work item is depicted by, oh boy, what is this? This is a present with a bow on it. My art skills are not the best with a Sharpie. So a backlog is two things. It's a list of things to do that's one-dimensional, and it's prioritized. That's it. The product backlog is a big list of things to do that's prioritized and can change over time. The sprint backlog is a small list of things to do that is prioritized that doesn't change over time. At least it shouldn't. So this is what you take into the sprint, and this is what the development team works on, where hopefully at the end of the sprint the thing that you show off to your stakeholders in the review section, review ceremony rather, is the potentially shippable work increment. So what's this thing? This is the big list of things to do that does change. And this is the genius of Scrum, one of the geniuses of Scrum in my opinion. This allows you to get things done as the world changes. So for the duration of the sprint, the development team is just working on this. And as time goes by, as the world changes, you can reflect those changes in the world over here. You might find out that this thing that you wanted to build is no longer useful. Okay, it's no longer towards the top, then shove it back down towards the bottom. You may have found that there is new information on this thing you wanted to build. That's fine. Add that to something in the product backlog. The way I've drawn it like this, the reason why I've drawn it like this is because towards the bottom of the product backlog, you end up having things that aren't as well defined. And therefore, towards the top, you do have things that are better defined. The reason for this is you don't want to spend a ton of time refining all the things in your product backlog, because who's to say that you're going to get to them anytime soon? You want to be able to be agile and flex with the changing world. So refine things just in time, to use that lean idea. And shortly before sprint planning, usually sprinkled through the sprint, take some time to refine this list such that when it's time to come up with another sprint backlog, you take the top of the product backlog and you shove it over. Hopefully I've explained that decently. So those are the 3 artifacts of Scrum, the 5 events of Scrum, and the 3 roles of Scrum. Those were Sticky 7, 6, 5. And here's Sticky 4 again. Now that I've explained a few things, Sticky 4 might make a little bit more sense. As you get things done, this is the sprint. This is the 2-week, on average, box of time in which you do things. And then this is meant to represent the daily Scrum. So this would be drawn over and over and over again. And then at the end of this, you have a potentially shippable work increment from which to get feedback to see if you're even on the right track to contribute towards your build, measure, learn cycle, if you're doing one of these. But since Agile can help you with a mindset that embraces feedback loops for the what and the how, and Scrum can give you a framework that codifies these feedback loops in the what and the how, you can pull off build, measure, learn cycles to see if what you're building is towards a future that you care about. So I think I'll pause here. How are we doing on time? About 24 minutes. All right. Wanted to get under half an hour. Thank you for watching. If this was useful to you and you're looking for more, then please visit scrumin7.com. My name is Merrill Lamont, and that was Scrum in 7 Stickies. Stay agile, my friends.